Welcome to Shorty SuperCoach, and today is the day we've been looking forward to for some time. SuperCoach 2017 is up and running, and there's a certain sense of excitement for picking our sides on the proper format. Many of us have been picking and plotting our teams for weeks, if not months now, but there's nothing quite like getting the app out or the actual laptop, getting onto the old SuperCoach website and getting stuck into the proper stuff. Today's the day. Many of you will be getting stuck into it tonight. It's always good to get into the real stuff, and I thought I would do likewise and get stuck into my first team. Now, of course, I've had this sort of team rolled out in other planning sides and team pickers or what have you, but this is, of course, in the real stuff with the proper display, and I thought I'd get right into it and give you guys a look at my initial side. Now, of course, it is worth noting that it is my first side and somewhat of a draft team. I've been thinking of it for some time now, as you would have seen me discuss in all the team previews. One thing before I jump into it I will note is don't pay too much attention to the bench players and rookies, because they'll chop and change and they'll become more clear as time goes on, because it's pretty much guesswork. There is the odd one or two that we certainly can say with a fair bit of confidence they'll be in round one sides, but otherwise it really depends on pre-season form and things like that. So I'll jump straight into it and we'll go into the back line. Now, Taylor Adams, I think, has been a pretty popular selection, of course, a new addition to our defence, and I'm pretty happy with him being in there, and I think he'll be in many sides, and rightly so. A guy who can play probably mostly midfield for the Pies, I would dare say, inside ball, and I think he'll be a very popular pick, as will Rory Laird. I think he's a very wise and obvious choice for many. Wins plenty of the ball out of that Adelaide back line, reads the play well, and I think he's working into some of his best form of his career, so I think he'll be popular as well. Luke Hodge, probably one who won't be as popular, I wouldn't have thought, but he's in my side at the moment, and I just love the look of him at 481k. He's training well at the moment. He's got a full pre-season currently underway, which is pretty exciting, to be honest. I think if we see some pre-season matches and see him with a bit of midfield rotation, then I'll certainly be all over him. If he's pure backline, then I'll probably be a bit concerned, but O'Meara doesn't look like he'll be right until early in the season, in the early stages, so I think Hodge, as well as the departure of Lewis and Mitchell, there'll certainly be the need for a wise and experienced head to certainly be in that midfield. And whenever he played last year, he scored pretty well, so I don't think scoring's a worry. I think it's just fitness, and if that good pre-season continues, then he should book himself a spot in Shorty's SuperCoach, or Shorty's Superstars I should say. So used to rolling out that name. But Hamish Hartlett will also be a popular selection, no doubt. 423k, a bloke that's very capable of averaging in the high 90s. I'm not 100% sold on him. I'll need to be convinced throughout the pre-season that he is getting a bit of midfield time and is in good touch, because there was no obvious reason that he had a poor season last year. More so the fact that it was exactly that, just a poor season, didn't find his best form, as did a lot of other Port Adelaide players, so we'll be looking to see him not only fit but in good form. And then of course that leads us into your rookie price players. You know, Sharon Berg, I'm pretty sure he's tracking along fairly well from his recovery from injury by all reports, but no doubt he's long been touted as that sort of halfback flank of the Pies. Luke Ryan looks an obvious choice. Obviously at the Dockers with a struggling and redeveloping team, he's ready to go. He'll be very popular. Tom Doty of the Adelaide Crows, you know, top 20 pick last year, didn't get a go. You know, he might be in the mix. And Tom Stewart, I think being a Cats fan, Stewart looks like the likely front runner as regards to round one debutants. So the fact that we are an ageing backline, he's played VFL footy, ready to go. I think he could be a nice third or fourth tall and probably battle it out with someone like an Andrew Mackie, so it'd be interesting to see how that goes. But as I said, they're more so just placeholders for now, and certainly don't criticise those too hard, but certainly my premium and field players are no doubt ones to certainly get stuck into, because I've put plenty of thought into those. I guess noticeable absentees from that back line is the likes of a Heath Shaw or a Sam Doherty, who will no doubt feature in many teams. Certainly aware of that, no doubt about that, and I think probably Hodge and Hartlett could be two guys whose spots are up for debate. the likes of Hartlett could be dropped for a Cade Collar-Jasny or something like that, or maybe a player who is slightly cheaper and in some good form, while Hodge can easily be upgraded. And no doubt Shaw and Doherty will be heavily considered, more so Shaw, but at this stage neither feature, which is open to debate. I think many will have at least one of them in their first defender position. At this stage I do not, but I certainly will assess that throughout and see how those guys are travelling through the pre-season. Moving on to the midfield, of course headed by Dan Hanbury and Adam Treloar, two rising stars of the competition. You know, they explain why they're being picked by their own and their numbers and their seasons of years gone by. Certainly Hanbury has made himself one of the premier midfielders in the comp. Hard running, absolute jet. If you check out my Sydney preview, I certainly get stuck into the likes of Parker, Kennedy and Hanbury, and the ones you should be picking out of those. And as you can see, I've opted for Hanbury. I think Treloar, interesting pick. I think a lot will be scared off by his price tag, and I guess he is unproven as a genuine premium, but I think the back end to his 2016 season is enough for me, and I've been a big fan of him for a long time. I think he's capable of huge numbers, and I expect to see him have a fantastic season, and I could see a 110 plus out of him. Nat Fyfe, I mean, he picks himself. He'll be one of the most popular picks in the competition. Tom Mitchell, now that's an interesting one as well. Of course, there is a void to be filled at the Hawks, and he was purpose traded to them to fill that role as a contested ball winner. Lewis and Mitchell have gone. He will certainly get plenty of opportunity in there. I think he's nicely priced. I think that's something that really appealed to me. 565k. I do think he's got the ability to probably push that up to around the 110, certainly 108, 109, which I'd be pretty happy with. Has a great ability to rack up the ball, inside numbers, and a high tackler as well, so I think he'll be right in the thick of it when it comes to picking my final midfield. Dylan Shield, a bit of a gut feel and hunch pick. Of course, if you saw my Giants preview, I obviously raved about him, and I do feel like he's a superstar in the waiting. He often cops the most attention from the GWS midfielders, and there's a reason for that. I mean, he's damaging, explosive, and I don't think we're yet to see that over the course of a whole season. We've seen it in spits and spurts, even within the game. I think there's plenty of time on ground minutes for him to increase as well, and I just think that we'll see a big season from Shield. I may even be stubborn on this. I know you shouldn't go with your heart and your gut too often, but I just feel that Shield will explode at some stage, and if he has a good pre-season, well, that'll be enough for me. Dane Beams, obvious pick, like Fyfe, will be as popular as any. I think they're both pretty much locks, guaranteed that they get through a good pre-season. Both have had troubles with their body, but if they get through and are looking good for round one, then they'll be in just about anyone's team who takes the game seriously. And then we move in to our midfielders on the rookie price sort of format. Sam Powell-Pepper, he'll be popular. Looks like a good chance to get a round one debut for Port Adelaide. If he does, he'll be in plenty of teams. The hard-nosed midfielder there. Myers, of course, 133,000, played plenty of footy. Of course, is undervalued and underpriced given last year and the suspension, so he'll be in many sides, no doubt, providing he gets into the best 22. I think that looks pretty likely, but, you know, the Bombers have had a high turnover and, you know, they're a bit of an unknown quantity at times. Pickett, you know, he's a good chance to play some footy, no doubt. Top pick. Freeman, of course, it's all about those hammies. Can he get his body right? If he does, he's a lock, as simple as that. And Graham as well, big-bodied young lad. All the rave is, and that they'll be right in the thick of it for a spot in the Tigers midfield. Pretty competitive in midfield, I must say, for Richmond, but certainly he's one to keep an eye on, and he's very well priced. So, as I said, those midfield positions, especially for your 110 to 150,000 guys, really up for debate, and we won't truly know until those round one teams come out. Of course, I've gone with a 6 premium setup in my midfield. Now, some might argue the Shield selection, some might argue your Tom Mitchell selection, and are they actually premiums? I believe they will be, but I've gone with the philosophy of going somewhat big in my midfield, lock in 6 premiums with 5 guys that'll play games and make me money. I haven't mucked around with a Swallow or an O'Meara or anything like that. I'm playing it pretty safe. I understand if you do go with a mid-pricer, but personally, I believe you can get the most midfield points, well, you can get the most points from your midfield. They're the highest averaging players, capable of going big, and I believe that I'll be going with that philosophy. Of course, no Dangerfield. Some people might also argue the fact that maybe I haven't got a top-end mid in there, but I would argue back that I definitely think Hanbury and Treloar can take their games to the next level. I'll definitely look to get Dangerfield in. I'll explain why I'm not picking him in my Geelong preview, but I think I've got a pretty strong midfield there, and it is a bit of a next generation midfield. I think Fife and Beams are obvious picks, and then you've got young guns in the likes of Hanbury, Shield, Treloar and Mitchell. I think in a couple of years those guys will be far more popular picks after they get some gun 110 seasons under their belt, but until they do, people can be a little gun shy on selecting them, but I'm going to go with them. I think they're certainly at the top of my priority list at this stage. Of course, pre-season can alter that depending on form and of course injury. Moving along to the ruck department, Todd Goldstein picks himself as far as I'm concerned. Pretty much a no-brainer. We know what he's capable of with his massive year a couple of years back, and he's struggled a little bit with his body at times, as well as sharing the ruck load. I don't think he'll share it too much. Dawr, a little bit injured, but so is Ben Brown. I don't think Dawr's going to take too much ruck time away from him, and if Goldstein can get on top of those little niggly injuries, then I think he'll be a player that we're all over, and he's pretty well priced for what we know he can capably do, and he can go around your 115 quite easily. Stephan Martin, bit of a unique selection. By no means is he a lock, but certainly I'm quite excited by the potential with him. He's priced at $4.88, and I think that's a fantastic price. I mean, reading some articles, he certainly struggled with a number of things last year. He didn't want to blame the concussion that he copped from that massive hit, but did just struggle with a few, I think it was knee soreness through much of the year. So I think if he can get back to a full fit Stephan Martin, then we know what we're going to get. As long as he's not really sharing the ruck with Archie Smith or something like that, which I'd find surprising, I think Martin will definitely be the main man. So I think we know that he was probably the best ball winner around the ground as far as big guys go. Not necessarily a big tap ruckman, but he can win plenty of the ball, and I reckon he'd be a nice point of difference. Now, of course, we got the fella on the bench there who I'm not even going to try and pronounce his name. I must say I know very little about him. All I know is that he can pick as a ruck and a forward. That's good enough for me. Of course, that could come in handy at times. It might not. I mean, you obviously got to pair it up with a forward ruck in your forward line, which is something I'll take a look into as we get closer to the first bounce of the AFL 2017 season. But at this stage, it's always nice if you're going to go with a cheap ruck 3, then you go with a guy who's dual position, just in case you do need to swap things around. And at this stage, I don't think there's anyone really putting their hand up as a real rookie ruck. If they do, then of course you go with that, because it's always good to have as many positions available to make money from. Of course, that then makes your vice captain loophole a little more difficult, because traditionally it is always your ruck 3. But again, those sort of real detailed sort of things of our sides will become clearer and be looked into, and much easier to decide upon when round 1 teams and pre-season games get rolling. So of course Max Gawn also doesn't feature there, so there's no Shaw, Dangerfield, Gawn. You might be saying, Shorty, you're a little light on here. If you really want to get my in-depth opinions on those guys, you can go to the team previews of the clubs they play for and get a listening to there. But I just think Gawn is far too expensive for a guy who's put together one very good season. Very good. I think he will back it up. But to pay that amount of coin, A, I think he'll probably drop, no doubt. B, his body has proven susceptible to injury. And C, I like the Martin option. I think Goldstein's an absolute lock. I think there's mid-price options are too risky. I would often have a mid-price option. This is the first time I've really gone set and forget, if you like. So we'll have to wait and see, because I think Martin's capable of 110, and we'll just have to see how Gawn goes. He is capable of enormous numbers, but you just never quite know. But head along to the Melbourne preview if you're really interested on my in-depth thoughts on Maxi Gawn. Moving along, and finally to the forward line, a couple of dogs tee that off with Dalhouse and McRae. My Western Bulldogs preview was released tonight, and I'll discuss those guys in that, and I think they're about as obvious as it gets. I mean, certainly Dalhouse is up there with Beams as probably your first pick guy. I think he's as obvious as anything. Proven gun, a fantastic player, underrated player. To get him in the forward line, he'll be in many, many sides. McRae, I think he can say similar. There's slightly more doubt about him, maybe with his ball use and consistency, but I'm a big fan of him. Have been for a long time since he was a young fella coming through, and I reckon he's about priced at unders as well. I mean, I think 5'11's a pretty good price because I see him averaging 3 figures at the worst, high 90s. So I think those guys are plain and simple locks. A couple of your next generation stars as well, in the likes of Heaney and Wingard. I'll start off with Heaney because I think he's going to also be a popular selection, and rightly so. Looks blessed with talent, as we know, and he looks bound for midfield time, which is, as we know, it's what it's all about. There's no point rolling around as a half-forward flanker and doing your best. I think we really want to pick forwards who are going to play midfield time. And I think Heaney's time is now. I think we'll see him really play solid midfield minutes in the Swans engine room, and I think there's certainly opportunity for him to do that with Mitchell moving on and maybe an older statesman in Jack and McVeigh taking a slight backward step. And I think you just can't let a guy of that talent go to waste on a half-forward flank consistently. I think he's now got enough games under his belt, enough confidence and pre-seasons. We saw some great footy throughout the finals, and I think he'll be a very popular selection, and rightly so. Chad Wingard, this is also more of a wait-and-see pick. I think if he can get some midfield time, he'll be a lock for my side. He's averaged high 90s in the past, and obviously had a poorer season, like many Port Adelaide players did. They had an off year. Wingard didn't quite get going, was injured at times. I think concussion affected him, had some games that were certainly affected by less time on ground due to injury. So I think he's slightly unders in price. He's a star of the game. We know what he's capable of, a big game player. And I think if there is that opportunity for him to roll into the midfield a fair bit more, then, and I think that's what his end game is. You read articles, you always want to get your cream of your crop and your silky players into the midfield. It's always what you want to do. And if 2017 is looking like that for Wingard, I think it'd be hard to say no to. And then, of course, we work into the 4 rookie price players. Aaron Black, he's got a lot to do to get into the Geelong side, no doubt, but there's a position waiting for him. A few guys will be vying for that second tall forward option alongside Hawkins. But, gee, we need it. We no doubt need that second tall option to take a bit of heat off him and provide a target. And if Black can get his body right and get on top of things and really hit the ground running, I think he's a fantastic selection because he'll play plenty of games. Not going to blow the roof apart with scores, but I think there's a spot at the Cats for him, and if he can make it his own, he'll play plenty of matches. Harley Bellick, another young player from the Fremantle Dockers that has been very, very talented for a long time and highly touted. Struggled with a bit of injury throughout the year. I think it was a wrist injury potentially. I did look it up a while ago when I was doing the Dockers preview, but I think the opportunity will be there for him in 2017 as Fremantle look to reignite themselves through the youth, no doubt, and I think he'll be one to benefit from that. And then a couple of mature age guys on the bench sitting at 102k. Smith from the Demons played at the Casey Scorpions, I believe, and looks, as I said with Aaron Black, looks to be, has his eyes all on that second ruck or forward spot, I should say, in the Melbourne forward line. I think he'll be in the thick of it there. And Eddie also kicked 68 goals in the SANFL. 2 guys who find themselves at a club who probably need some more goal-kicking power. I mean, there's obviously competitive positions there and players who have been in those positions, but I think if those guys can impress throughout the pre-season, they'll be pretty good chances to play games immediately, and there won't be any doubt about their bodies being ready. It'll just be about whether they can adapt to AFL footy, which is always comforting when you pick rookie players, because it's always nice to know that they've played senior footy at the next level down, which SANFL and VFL, fantastic competitions, so they'll certainly be nearly up to speed, and getting that opportunity, they'll want to grab it with both hands. So that is my side. That is it, right on the screen, the whole team. You can have a look at it there in its entirety. It might change a bit. I hope it doesn't, to be honest. I think I'm pretty happy with it at the moment. Now, one thing that I will be trying not to do throughout the pre-season, and don't quote me on it because you never know, the temptation is always there to chop and change your team. Now, I've been thinking about this side and looking into it for a couple of months now as I've been through the previews. Now, of course, you got to roll with the punches in regards to injury, but I think one thing we get sucked into it a little bit throughout the pre-season is a guy not setting it on fire in these small 20-minute quarter games and getting turned off and scared off by these poorer scores from guys that we consider premiums. I myself am normally fairly disciplined at that, but it can just put a little bit of doubt into the mind if they're not really running into the ground and running on top of the ground. So I think that'll be one thing I try to avoid, is chopping and changing players based on their pre-season form. It's not the be-all and end-all. Don't just pick up the stat sheets and look at the paper and see their numbers. If you're going to base it on pre-season form, watch the game. You know, watch the AFL replay on the website. You'll get a far better gauge of, you know, did they actually get the opportunity to win the ball? How are they looking? Because I think personally, just watching a player and watching how they're going, you can see a fair bit. Are they playing better? Are they looking stronger in the contest? Particularly a few of the guys I've mentioned, like Wingard and Heaney, and some of those younger types who are still looking to burst into the next category and burst in the elite category. So I think that'll be interesting to watch. But it's always tempting as you look at your side each day to go, oh gee, maybe I'll change him, maybe I'll downgrade him, and all of a sudden your first team that you're happy with and you thought about for ages is far different. So I'll probably try and roll with the punches a little bit more. Hopefully these guys can stay injury free, because I must say I like the structure. I might inject a little bit more firepower into certain lines, but at this stage I'm pretty pleased with the structure and the amount of guys that I view as potential premiums. So pretty pleased with it. As always, comment on the video, let me know your thoughts. Hopefully this one provokes a fair bit of interest and debate, because people love looking at other people's sides. It's one of those things. People love to look at videos where people, you know, reveal their teams. So hopefully it can spark a little bit of interest. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Give the video a like by all means. Get along to SuperCoach HQ for sure. If you haven't checked out my video on the SuperCoach Championship ring, you can have a look at that as well. And of course you can find all those quite easily on my home page, so feel free to check those out. But go hard guys, don't hold back. If you think my team's an absolute pile of shit, certainly let me know. But if you reckon I'm on the money for a couple of those, as always, give me some feedback. So thanks for tuning in guys, and I'll catch you soon.